Healing the human body with invisible forces. I mean, that sounds like pure science fiction, right? Something you'd see in a movie. But what if I told you that this technology is not only real, it's actually being used in clinics as we speak? And it's at the heart of some of the most mind-blowing medical research happening today. So how in the world are scientists using invisible forces to tell our bodies to heal themselves? Let's dive in and break it down.
So the big question, the one this all boils down to, is pretty simple but also kind of profound. Can we really harness something as basic as a magnetic field to command our own cells to repair and regenerate tissue? Well, it turns out the answer is a huge yes, and the science behind it is just awesome.
And look, this is not some pie-in-the-sky idea for the future. There's a technology called diamagnetic therapy that's already out there, being used by doctors and physical therapists right now. And it's used for an incredible range of problems. We're talking everything from helping bone fractures heal faster, to treating chronic pain, healing stubborn skin wounds, and repairing muscle tears. This stuff is quietly changing the game in rehabilitation.
Okay, but that's the real question, isn't it? How does just waving a magnet over an injury actually make a difference? It feels a little like magic. Well, the secret is a concept called endogenous stimulation. All that really means is using targeted energy to give the body's own internal healing crew a major jumpstart. And to really get how that works, we need to zoom way down to the cellular level.
So, to really get to the bottom of this, we're going to break down this absolutely brilliant experiment. It tackles one of the toughest challenges out there, regenerating bone. What these researchers did was set out to build a smart scaffold that could literally be switched on by a magnet.
So first things first, you need a foundation, right? For this, they use something called alginate hydrogel, which is basically a gel made from seaweed. The best way to think of it is like a tiny biological construction scaffold. It gives the new cells a structure to climb on and grow.
Okay, but here's where it gets really clever. To make that scaffold smart, they mixed in these magnetic nanoparticles. These things are unbelievably small, and their whole job is to act like millions of tiny little radio antennas, just sitting there, waiting to pick up a signal from a magnetic field. And then you have the final piece of the puzzle, and this one might just be the most important part: exosomes. These are little nano-sized packages that come from stem cells. Just think of them as tiny instruction manuals. They carry the exact messages that tell other cells, hey, it's time to get to work building new bone.
All right, so let's recap. We've got the construction scaffold, we've got the tiny magnetic receivers baked into it, and we've got the biological instruction manuals. The next step was to put it all together and see if a simple magnet could be the key to switch the whole operation on. And this diagram here, it lays out the whole setup perfectly. You see, they mix the nanoparticles into the gel, they freeze dry it so it becomes a solid scaffold, and then they add the stem cells and those super important exosomes. Then they split the samples into two groups. One is just left to do its thing, and the other gets placed inside a static magnetic field.
The goal here was super clear. The big question was, could this smart scaffold, when you flip the switch with a magnet, send the perfect signal to tell those stem cells to actually transform into bone-building cells and start working?
So, the scientists let these cells grow for 21 days, measuring all the key signs of bone formation along the way. And what they found? Well, it wasn't just a small difference. It was a massive confirmation of what they were hoping to see. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at this side-by-side comparison. The regular scaffolds, yeah, they had some cell growth, which you'd expect, but the group with the magnetic scaffold in the magnetic field, it was on a whole other level. We're talking way more cell growth, a much more powerful push toward bone formation, and way higher levels of mineralization. That's the hard stuff that actually makes up new bone.
And if that wasn't clear enough, just look at this chart. It's measuring a key marker for bone formation. You can see the control group is pretty low. The standard scaffold does a little better. But then, look at that bar on the far right, the magnetic scaffold with the magnetic field. The activity is just off the charts. It was an absolute home run.
You don't even have to take my word for it. The researchers themselves put it perfectly in their conclusion. They basically said they successfully built a scaffold that, when you turn it on, creates the perfect environment to tell stem cells, yep, it's time to become bone. It's a massive step forward. So here's the bottom line, the big takeaway. The magnet itself wasn't doing the healing. It was acting like a remote control, a Kickstarter. It flipped a switch on the nanoparticles, which then helped deliver the instructions from the exosomes directly to the stem cells. That created this powerful chain reaction that jump-started the body's own ability to regenerate.
Okay, so this is super cool, in a petri dish, right? But now let's zoom out, because this is where it starts to connect back to real-world patients and those clinics we talked about. This tiny experiment gives us the key to understanding how this tech really works.
You see, in a clinical setting, this therapy works in 4 main ways. It can physically push fluid out of an area to reduce swelling. It can mess with pain signals to bring relief. And it can even be used to deliver medicine without a needle. But the one we care about, the one that ties everything together, is number 2, endogenous stimulation.
And this is the aha moment. This is where it all clicks into place. Endogenous stimulation is just the fancy clinical name for exactly what we saw in that lab experiment. It's the whole idea of using an outside energy source, like a magnet, to trigger and basically supercharge the body's own natural healing powers. The experiment is the proof on a microscopic scale, showing how a magnet can tell cells to build bone. The very same principle works for a torn muscle. The magnetic field just delivers a different set of instructions, like reduce inflammation or repair this tissue faster.
So, what's the big picture here? Why is this such a huge deal? Well, because this is about more than just healing injuries a little faster. It's really about a whole new philosophy of medicine. It's pointing to a future where we don't just patch up damaged tissue, we actually convince the body to regrow it from scratch. This research is basically a blueprint for a new generation of smart materials that we can activate whenever we want to regenerate all kinds of complex tissues.
And that leaves us with one last, really exciting thought to chew on. We now have solid proof that we can use these invisible forces to give ourselves incredibly precise instructions. The question is no longer if we can do this. The question now is, what's next? Nerves? Cartilage? What about entire organs? The possibilities are just starting to open up, and it's going to be incredible to watch.